say that the city of Richmond provided the model for the ordinance that we're moving forward. So I am particularly honored to, something not right? I speak too softly. Thank you. So I'm particularly honored to get to introduce the city of Richmond Energizer batteries that have come from this city. These two women have made remarkable turnaround in the city of Richmond, and I'm doing what I can in Santa Rosa to model some of their achievements. Gayle McLaughlin, former Richmond mayor and currently a city council member, was first elected in 2004 as mayor in 2006 and then re-elected in 2010. Their charter only allows 2 terms as mayor, so she has then again run for city council and recently won her seat in 2014 again. So a lot of good service. As mayor, Gayle led the city in a very progressive direction, and it kept city workers in their jobs, city services in place through some really difficult economic times. She was in office through the recession. The council passed a minimum wage ordinance, raising the minimum hourly wage for workers to $13 by 2018, and facilitated grassroots efforts calling for fair taxation, which led to an historic settlement in which Chevron agreed to pay an additional $114 million into the city's general fund. So I am honored to introduce my role model, Gayle McLaughlin.
Yay! Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be here among like-minded people who understand the importance of grassroots organizing, because that's obviously how things get done. It gets done that way in Richmond, and I know the work that you do here in Petaluma and in the area around Petaluma takes that same kind of grassroots organizing. So you've got a great council member here, and I know you all do great work, and I'm so glad that you're utilizing some of the things that we've done. You know, some of the things are very much can be repeated in other cities. Other things you could just get some ideas and fit them into your own city's needs. So, but we do think we have a great model to share with others. So, is there a lot of yeah. Okay, maybe I'll back up a little bit. All right, so I have a PowerPoint to show you. I mean, we like to consider Richmond as a local community defining its own destiny, and it's taken a lot of work over the past 10 years, and we've had some very, very phenomenal successes and some ongoing challenges as well. Before I begin, though, I want to ask one of our representatives from SEIU from Richmond said that there might be SEIU people here from, are there any? Just wanted to, if so, all right, just wanted to give a shout out to you. We work closely with SEIU in Richmond, so we're very glad to see you here. All right, let's begin with this slideshow. So, first of all, this shares a little bit about our diversity in Richmond. We're a majority people of color community. We have 108,000 people, give or take 1,000. Some people say 107, 106. But it's a little over 100,000, and we have about 18% under the poverty level. 40% of our population is Latino, 27% African American, 13% Asian, and the rest Caucasians. Oh, we do have a Native American community as well, and some Pacific Islanders, a smaller percentage. So for 10 years, we've been battling the Chevron Corporation. We're home to this 112-year-old oil refinery, and Richmond Refinery is the single largest greenhouse gas polluter in the state of California. It impacts our community and environment with other toxic air contaminants and criteria air pollutants daily. Even though we've had some great success with fair taxes, with a settlement, we still feel Chevron, which is a multi-billionaire corporation, doesn't pay its fair share of taxes. And they hardly hire locally at all. Something like 5 to 7% of their workforce is from Richmond. So they've got some bad record in many ways. So the refinery is responsible for 10% of Chevron's worldwide sales and profits. That's about $2.5 billion in profits alone. And that's just from the refinery in Richmond. So while they've grown in money, Richmond has grown in poverty over the 100 years they've been in existence. 94% of their $40 billion a year capital budget goes to more oil and gas exploration and development, while only 3% goes to making the refinery as clean and safe as we know it should be for our community. And because it's not as safe as it should be, we have accidents like, well, so-called accidents like the 2012 fire that sent 15,000 local people to local hospitals for respiratory treatment. So they were charged criminally for willful neglect of the refinery. And that fire spread all the way across the Bay Area. So we know that leaders are needed on every level. We know they're needed on the national level, the state level, but very much so on the local level. So in Richmond, we have a history. This is going back decades before the RPA, the Richmond Progressive Alliance, started to get underway. It was known for its corruption, its crime, and pollution. City Hall was dominated by Chevron, and elected officials were all in Chevron's pockets. There's a little cartoon that one of our RPA folks came up with where candidates and office holders in Richmond were marching to the beat of Chevron's drum. So we know that's been a long time issue, and we were setting out to change that. So the Richmond Progressive Alliance emerged in 2003. A few of us came together, and you'll hear more about that, a little bit more about that from Margaret's presentation. But people in the past, prior to 2003, had formed various organizations to try and fight back against Chevron. But there was never an effort that impacted City Hall until the RPA came together. And we joined together as an organization from various party affiliations. And we had a progressive vision. And one of the key things we were solid and firm on was that candidates would take no corporate donations. So, after decades of Chevron domination, ordinary people in Richmond have organized and stood up to this oil giant. We know that big oil is formidable, but we also know, based on our work in Richmond, we have proved that they are not invincible. So we have been releasing Chevron's iron grip on the city council, on city government. And the way we have done this is by a grassroots movement, which is very, very key. I mean, nothing gets done in Richmond without a grassroots movement. It's really, really important to organize and mobilize the community. And by the election of council members who cannot be bought. Chevron actually outspent us in 2014, 20-1. And all our candidates won, while all of Chevron's candidates lost. So that definitely proves it can be done. But it took 10 years in the making to have some really good successes. And we were building support all along. We had various organizations like, ACE and APEN and Communities for a Better Environment, Sierra Club, and of course, Richmond Progressive Alliance was central to all of this. We kind of play we're the glue that networks between all these organizations. 350.org, unions, Native American group, I Don't Know More. Somas Richmond is a Latino group. Okay, next. And these are the victories. Like I said, it took 10 years to build up, to what we have now, which is 3 RPAers sitting on the city council. In 2004, I won my campaign for city council, but I was the only RPAer, a very lonely person on that city council. And then in 2006, I ran for mayor, and still I won. I was the only RPAer. By 2008, we got another RPA candidate on the city council, Jeff Ritterman. And then in 2010, I was reelected mayor, and we got Jovanka Beckles elected to city council. Right, she's been doing great work. And then our latest victory, Jeff Ritterman did not run again in 2012, and that was one year that we did not win the candidates that we ran. But come again to 2014, we built up our support again. We made sure people understood who we were and what was going on in the city and what Chevron was doing to oppose us. And we had a clean sweep victory with myself, Jovanka, and Eduardo Martinez winning in 2014.
Very good.
So in 2008, this is another way that we build support through the ballot box, through ballot measures. And in 2008, we had a citizens ballot measure taxing large manufacturers, which would have taxed Chevron predominantly. It was passed by the voters, but the measure was overturned by the courts. So we immediately started working on a new ballot measure. That one, the court said, oh, you didn't consider this or that. The wording wasn't just right. But we wanted Chevron to pay its fair share of utility taxes, so we just came right back with another one. Well, that brought Chevron to the negotiating table. And we decided to settle this, for a large amount, and the large amount was $114 million over 15 years. So that was a grassroots success. So one thing that we recognize that you have to not only work during election years, but in non-election years, building those grassroots organizations and mobilizations. So here we defeated a casino. On the right, you see Richmond voted no to a casino. That was another ballot measure. There was anti-casino, anti-urban casino folks here. Then we had, some of you may remember the eminent domain program, people standing up to Wall Street. We now have a version of that with a nonprofit helping us to prevent foreclosures. We have Richmond IDs for all our community, including our immigrant community. And there's some green job mobilization for green jobs and solar in the city. So these are things that went on in non-election years. Here's more work that we did addressing the roots of crime. We stopped an expansion of the jail. You can see lots of people involved in this. Clearly, everyone wanted the sheriff to understand that we should invest in people, not prisons. And as a result, we got a considerable amount of money for reentry programs. And we have a reentry one-stop center opening very soon in the city of Richmond for parolees that come out. They need those services to avoid recidivism, etc. There in the bottom right, let's just go back for a second, is our police chief, who this has gotten some attention, has joined a protest, a Black Lives Matter protest. So we're glad to see that. And that's myself, and Jovanka was the vice mayor. I was mayor at the time. So yeah, being involved in the movements of our time. We reduced homicides phenomenally over the time I was mayor. From 2007 to 2014, when my term ended, there was a 75% reduction in homicides. This only goes up to 2013, but in 2014 we only had 11 homicides. 11 too many, but that was from, if you go back to the 90s, all the way back to the 90s, it was 61. So Richmond's reputation is changing. And it's because we address the roots of crime. You know, we do have a community-involved police force. Okay. We also increased our minimum wage, as was mentioned. It will go up to $13 an hour in a phased-in approach. There's somebody with a microphone saying, "Hey, gee, all these other prices are raising, but the federal minimum wage, you can't even see any change in that, because of course that has not changed." Okay, next. We also promote worker-owned co-ops. Here's a co-op in Richmond called Fusion Latina. We have other co-ops as well. We want to keep that movement going, all right? Because that's workplace democracy, right? You know, people share decision-making. And we do, we came from the Juneteenth parade before coming here. Today was the celebration of Juneteenth. And this is from a previous Juneteenth, but it's a big event in Richmond. We think festivals are, and just, being community empowerment is involved with these celebrations, Juneteenth being the celebration of the freedom of the slaves after the Civil War. So next. And Cinco de Mayo, of course, is big in Richmond. This is some dancers in our Cinco de Mayo parade. These parades really built over the last 10 years. We really promoted them, and everybody loves them. Next. We also promote art. We think that's another type of empowerment. We have a greenway down the center of Richmond, and we have murals with young people creating these murals, and we really foster that creativity. Next. Community gardens are big, urban agriculture. We have something like 27 community gardens that Urban Tilt, a major nonprofit in the city, tends. That's a little strawberry field. And then our basic electoral strategy. Margaret is going to talk more about that, but just to give you a little touch on it, we had hundreds of volunteers participating, and we did that, in 2014, but we also had those kind of mobilizations, maybe not as big in prior years. The idea is to keep growing. And we, made sure that all our candidates take no corporate money. We start early in the year and spend our money wisely and creatively. Go door to door, and we educate people about Chevron's motives, because Chevron lies. Chevron is so deceptive that we have to tell them, beware that these mailers will be coming that say this or that, and don't believe them, or call us, or contact us so we can share with you the truth. And we, of course, did a great Get Out the Vote mobilization to support Progressive Richmond. Here's one of the high-tech type of things we did. This bulletin board is one of the hit pieces. Actually, they had them all over Richmond and all up and down the freeway, I-80, with basically saying, if you see Gayle McLaughlin, tell her to call Richmond. And then it says, Gayle McLaughlin, traveling the world, ignoring Richmond. Now, I went for 5 days to Ecuador to see the contamination of the rainforest that Chevron is responsible for cleaning up, right? And they refuse to clean up. So basically, they don't like that community that I go and connect with the community in Ecuador. So instead, they throw a hit piece on me saying I'm traveling the world. Well, it didn't work at all, because our community knows I was a very, very present mayor, constantly out in the community, in the office, having meetings, and so it just didn't have the effect they thought it would. And one of the things some of our volunteers did was this light effect that they did at night. They shined this on the bulletin board, and if you can see, it says, "Get money out of politics." So that was pretty creative. And we had Bernie Sanders come to Richmond, and we had a full house for that. And he, of course, spoke, real passionately about, where the new income, 95% of it going to the top 1%. So we were real pleased that he came and supported us. He supported Team Richmond, myself, and the other RPA candidates. And Chevron spent over $3 million trying to elect their pro-oil, anti-environment candidates. They wanted a pro-Chevron city council one that would settle the lawsuit. We're suing Chevron for that big fire, the city is. And they wanted the kind of city council members that, would just settle for pennies. But of course, they didn't get that. So we know the lawsuit still is in court, and we expect to have, a real strong, firm type of approach to making them pay for this. Next. We just got a lot of national attention. We think that's good. We want Richmond to be seen as a model. The New York Times, PBS, The Nation, Bill Moyers, Democracy Now!, Rachel Maddow. We just really want people to know it can be done. These corporations, big banks cannot stop us if we all come together. Next. So, 2014 in Richmond, we think, was the place where David confronted today's Goliath and won. And the very end slide here. So we know that a community defining its own destiny has more battles to fight. The more we win, the more they try and stop us. We expect that to come about in 2016. So we need to support each other and deepen the national struggle, or deepen the struggle nationwide, whether it's local or national. And no progress without struggle. That's a beautiful little sign from a campaign we ran for a while. It's the I Love Richmond campaign. On the bottom it says, Chevron, stop polluting our air and our elections. So thank you.
What an inspiration. Wow. So our next speaker, and we'll have questions at the end. Our next speaker is Margaret Jordan, Richmond Progressive Alliance. And Margaret is a member of the steering committee of the Richmond Progressive Alliance, the RPA. She was a member of the campaign committee for Team Richmond at the 2014 election and has been an assistant to Councilwoman Jovanka Beckles. Since Beckles was first elected in 2010, Margaret is president of the Point Richmond Neighborhood Council. Margaret, please join us. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. It's really fun to tell our story. I think that Gayle did a superb job of giving the overview of the atmosphere in Richmond, of the political atmosphere in Richmond, of the place in progressives in the community. And I am going to focus on the nuts and bolts. How did it all come about? Before I do that, I'm going to have a little background to help you understand the context in which we are operating. Gayle showed this, slightly different numbers, but basically the same pattern. And one of the things that surprises people is the fact that we have a greater Latino population than African American. So in 1940, there were 23,000 people in Richmond, 270 of whom were African American. By 1946, there were 110,000, and there was a very large proportion of African Americans who migrated from the South for the jobs during the war. So there were significant numbers, and they were definitely the dominant group of people of color. Although whites prevailed as the dominant group, the African American community became much more organized and had a rich culture and network. And by the 80s, actually were becoming part of for the first time, becoming part of the city council. In 1989, George Livingston became the first black mayor of Richmond. So you can see there's been a significant change in the demographics, and that has caused some problems. African Americans has decreased their voting power, and they are they have low pay, unemployment, all the problems that they have, they're now blaming on Latinos. They take our jobs and so on and so forth. So it's kind of divisive, and it's really a terrible shame. one that Gayle talked about plenty, which was Chevron. Chevron dominated and has been for 100 years. An old-timer in Point Richmond told me, he said, when you needed something, so like an example, a water fountain in a park, the advice was to go to Chevron. So that was how they were, that was the old way. So based on this context, the guiding principles that underlie our platform are stop corporate nominations, number one, and the second one is One Richmond, and we against racism and against discrimination. I listed a number of initiatives that we have participated in. I won't say that we didn't initiate them, most of them, but we responded to the community and turned them into realities. One is that Richmond is a sanctuary city, and we have anti-ICE. ICE is not supposed to come into Richmond. There were driver's license checkpoints, which was a way of identifying undocumented Latinos, and we brought that to a stop by getting the council voted for the police to make that their lowest priority, and since they're always busy, they don't do that. We have municipal IDs, the community. It started with Latinos, and this is where we tried to bring the Latino and the African Americans together. The Latino community was complaining there weren't enough fields for soccer, and what we turned this into, it was a movement to try to get more fields for soccer and baseball and the other sports. Safe return, ban the box. We removed the box that says, have you ever been convicted on the city's, what's the word, employment applications, right. So those two, Stop Corporate Domination and One Richmond, are our main. In addition, we have, I think that's pretty, Gayle has covered it, pro-union stances. We do a Lorcom Protect in the environment and healthy Richmond. Most recently, we've become very involved in the issue of the schools. Richmond's schools are a disaster. The charter schools are becoming more and more popular, and we are looking for a way, and we've come up with an idea, which is going to be pretty tough. We want to make a lab school, so to speak, a community school, and figure out ways to bring community in and so on and so forth. So the schools are very important for us. Gayle mentioned this already. This wasn't our victory in 2014 was not a quick thing. We started in 2003, actually. The RPA was when the RPA came together, and since then you can see we've had these series of victories. You'll notice in 2012 we had 2 losses, and I'll talk about our theory about what happened in that year a little bit later. So what is the RPA? The RPA started in 2003. Basically, it was the coming together of Greens who were working in Richmond. They were on various issues, including stopping the criminalization of homeless and clean up the shorelines during the 40s, 50s, etc. The chemical industry had lots of chemical plants right on our shoreline, and they were hugely polluted, and some of them are to this day, and we're still fighting to get these cleaned up. Anyway, that's what some of the Greens topics. And then there were a group of Latinos who had experienced a very nasty case of police brutality at the Cinco de Mayo in that year in 2003, and these 2 groups came together, and then it grew, and that was actually the beginning. And one of the things I think that's really important to understand about us is that we have a lot in common, and we have some differences. And some of the differences is how we think political movements are built nationally. So we have Democrats, we have Greens, we have Socialists, Peace and Freedom, Independents. We have, as I said, Democrats. Some of Javanka, for example, was representative to the county, I don't know if they're called the Democratic Party, the county, what's it called? Anyway, they vote for
Central
delegates
Committee.
to elections, yes, thank you, yeah. So, since we can do this because city elections in Richmond are nonpartisan, so those issues, are ones that we don't have to confront and settle, quote. So I want to move now to a kind of like a very coarse, I guess you'd say, this division between what I'm calling mainstream political campaigning and the RPAs. So I may be making caricaturing the mainstream a little bit, so I hope I'm not offending anybody. So typically in mainstream politics, an individual decides to run or is asked to run, and they immediately put together a campaign committee and hire political consultants, and if they can afford it, campaign management companies. And they seek endorsements from the beginning from wealthy individuals, interest groups, and a lot of corporate money to finance their campaign. And from our point of view, right away becoming somewhat beholden to these interests. There is community participation, but I think it's a completely different kind of community participation. The community, you have people come as work on the campaigns, precinct work, participate in phoning to get out the vote, and so on. But it's not, you'll see when I describe ours, it's not the same thing. Once serving in office, again, a caricature, many mainstream politicians, believe they have the mandate of the electorate, and are isolated to one degree or another, especially those who leave, leave the geographic location, are isolated physically, and I think somewhat, also in terms of their consideration of the community. So they surround themselves with staff who research, develop policy, write their speeches, and the community involvement is, they have town halls, and they occasionally communities will lobby them, and that's pretty much how it works. I hope I haven't offended anybody. So our approach to politics. The key to our approach is the relationship of the campaigns and the community. Number one, we keep ourselves, as we've said before, we say it over and over, our litany, we keep ourselves free of corporate control by refusing corporate money. When we choose our candidates, we look in the community. We look for community activists who we think represent. We try to make, look for diversity. And sometimes we select people with little experience. And the campaigning is actually, at the same time that they're campaigning, they're being trained to campaign and for what they will do when they're elected. Once elected, and I think this is really an important point, our electeds govern with the community in a true way. They're not as opposed to, quote, for the community. Many of the initiatives that we take up on the council come from the community, nonprofits that have different issues, and often these allies, we rely on them to do the research the issues. Sometimes they help draft the ordinances, and they obviously definitely lead the movement to win at the city council. But for example, Javanka did actually, I think, two, but I'll just mention one. The Safe Return team became very interested in the issue of Ban the Box. They have a lot of connections to the Pacific Institute and Haas Institute. They did a huge amount of research and actually, really helped drafted the draft of the legislation that was eventually passed. So that, and similarly with the the driver's license checkpoints definitely came from community, municipal ID, etc. So we are really, it never stops. I mean, there's no discrimination between the role of the community in either the elections or serving. The community is always us. We are the community, actually. Okay. So who was Goliath? Goliath was the Chevron, #1, of course, and their supporters, building trades, and the Central Labor Council, which we consider unfortunate, but it's a result of their concern about jobs and, this unfortunate dichotomy between jobs and the environment, and other things. So the labor, that part of the labor movement was against us. The Democratic Party official bodies did not endorse us. They endorsed, I think, at least 2 of the Chevron candidates, if not all 3. The Contra Costa Times did not endorse us, the Council of Industries, and that's kind of like a beginning. Okay, so we know from Chevron, I think we haven't said here, we know for sure on the books, they spent $3 million on the campaign, plus all these other groups and many more contributed, so they had a lot of money. And our allies, SEIU, Local 21, another couple, some unions, Sierra Club, healthcare workers, NUHW, Black Mobilization, that's a small group of African Americans in Richmond, and the Mexican Political Alliance. And there are many more, but that's enough for now. So here we go to not exactly, but pretty much what we did. Our advice to anybody who wants to replicate, okay? So the first thing, and I cannot stress this, we started early, really early. Gayle started the I Love Richmond campaign in 2013, the year before. And the I Love Richmond campaign was essentially going into the neighborhoods, talking to people, getting people to sign up that they loved Richmond and they did not like what Chevron was doing. So that was, that was building for our election. This is hard. It's hard to start early because elections aren't on people's radar, and they aren't very interested, and that includes the general public and as well our volunteers. So you feel that point that you're kind of, they think you're a little crazy because you're already talking about these elections that are like in March. In March we're talking about November, and it's different. We started organizing house parties. Our first one, we held them from March to October. Our first, as I said, was in March. And in the beginning, when we were feeling our way, we used them to find out the concerns, and we measured the resonance of the issues that we thought were important. We explained our issues and our program. We got endorsements, donations, and importantly, we recruited people to work for the campaign. Many of these early hosts, somehow there was something about it, they really took ownership and became much more active in the campaign. We asked our potential allies, SEIU, Sierra Club, and others, for early endorsement. So this was before they normally endorse. This was before they got the whole range of candidates. We needed their endorsements because those endorsements we would leverage to more endorsements and a greater sense of that we were really something. Okay, so that's what we did there. And we started canvassing. I think Gayle talked about our canvassing, and our canvassing was not voter ID. Our canvassing was, we would tell our volunteers that our goal was that when we left, the person we had spoken to could explain who we were and what we were for to house people around them who didn't know. And that's a pretty high bar. So another technique was every year we had a wedge issue, which was very helpful, except for 1 year. In 2008, as Gayle said, it was Measure T. Casino. 2014 was to stop the Chevron's nomination of Richmond 2012, that was the year we lost. We put on the ballot a soda tax. I don't know if it was the first in the nation, but it was pretty close to being the first in the nation. And the beverage companies went berserk. And they convinced the African American community that this was a racist attack on them and poor people. And they mobilized them. And literally, we had one night where they came by and started bashing at our windows. I mean, it was really totally crazy, but that was the level it got to. So it failed, as you know, but in the long run, it was good, because I do believe it started the ball rolling to where it's becoming an issue throughout the country. But we believe that it was like, especially one of our candidates was close to being elected, and we believe that issue, we got linked with that issue, rightfully, and we lost votes. Okay? Okay. Running as a slate, we run as a slate. We tried ways to, I don't know with me, the literature, if anybody wants to see the literature. The reason we run as a slate is, well, first because we agree, second because we need to leverage our money. We need to get the most bang for our buck. So we have a small amount of individual candidate literature. We have but on all that literature, every literature has our whole slate. I'm going to move on here. We have issue-oriented campaign literature, Stop Chevron's Domination of Richmond, and Stop Community Schools. I have, if you're interested, this is not quite the complete pile, but this is getting close to our literature. And this is Chevron's negative campaigning only. Okay, they're kind of amusing. They're smart people who put these up. You might want to take a look at them. So we constantly try to publicize Chevron's connection to the candidates. Little tiny letters, major funding from Chevron. We blew it up and we put it on a lot of our literature. The negative attacks, we probably they had some impact, but we took them as an opportunity to say, look, this is the level to which they will stoop, because they know they can't win on merit, so they try to, and I think to some degree we were successful with that. Moving ahead really quickly, we are not perfect, and we are actively working on ways of becoming a more diverse organization ourselves with regard to age, ethnicity, etc. We're working on ways of finding stronger ties with our allies, and we're also looking for ways to move beyond Richmond, because a lot of our problems cannot be solved until we get more money, Prop 13 reform, etc. So we're going to continue what we're doing, and we're moving on.
Thank you. I want to say I recognize so many similarities in the processes in Richmond and the processes locally, and really appreciate the hard grassroots work they're doing. And want to include a little fact, because I only just recently learned that California has now reached the enviable position of being 50th in spending on public school students. Mississippi has beaten us. They've moved into the 49th spot. So it's absolutely correct. We have to work locally. We need people to come out and get the job done. And we also have to be aware of our interactions with the state level folks. But where we can really make a powerful difference is at our local level. And that's what we're here to talk about. I want to take questions and answers. We've only got about 10 minutes for questions and answers, but if you want to do some quick Q&A, we can do that. I know they're there, but it's so much to hear. Yes?
I just came from the U.S. Conference of Mayors in San Francisco. My question to Gayle McLaughlin is, what support did you ask for, and what support did you get from other mayors, including particularly women mayors, in your term in office?
I'm going to repeat the question, which was to Gayle. What support did Gayle receive from other mayors, and particularly from other women council members and mayors?
terms of organizing mayors, I put forward various efforts and some successful ones. Like, for example, I organized 13 mayors. This was early in my term to try and get the Cuban Five that were just recently freed by Obama. Well, we, the 13 mayors of California that came together, tried to get that happen in 2007, I believe it was. In our local community, there's council members and mayors, next door to Richmond, San Pablo, El Cerrito, Pinole that I've worked with. In terms of, now I'm a part, how could I forget this? I'm a part of a group, a national network of elected officials called Local Progress, and I'm on the board of that organization, and so that's some mayors, some council members. It's all local though, and it's all people that have that progressive mindset, and we share progressive policies with one another, so you can check out the website. I think it's localprogress.org. Bringing local elected officials with a progressive mindset together has always been one of my efforts, and so I'm still trying to get some further movement on that.
As we work together, we often start out isolated, and then our movements grow. So I agree. It's a good question, really helpful. Next question. Yes, sir. So the question is that in Richmond, there are 40% Latino, Latin American citizens or residents, and what percentage do we know are voting? I know in Santa Rosa we have almost 30%, but I also don't know. I know the voting rates are low, but I don't know what it is in Santa Rosa. Do you know your voting levels?
No, we don't. It's, maybe 30% sounds right, but I do want to say that we have a group that's starting, and it already has 35, 40 people, called Somos Latinos, and their whole goal now is working toward 2016 to get into the Latino community and get them voting.
We're seeing it locally with the North Bay Organizing Project. Yes. Somos Latinos. Somos Latinos in Richmond, and again, North Bay Organizing Project has been working diligently locally. Do you want to add something, Gayle?
I just want to add something quickly on that. One of the policies of the Local Progress Group that I'm a part of is to try and get voting rights locally for immigrants. So that's something that we've thought about in Richmond, so we'll have to see where that goes. Yeah.
And one of the ways we're trying to have more expansion of voting rights in Santa Rosa is the annexation of Roseland, because that's an entire group of people who can't vote because they are essentially not part of the city. So by doing that annexation, we're moving forward. So if there are any more questions, one more. Yes, Tom.
I heard you say that the officer-involved shootings in Richmond have gone down quite a bit. As you know, up here they have increased a lot. I know you can't speak for the police chief, but would you think he would be willing to come up and speak about some of the successful policing methods that have been employed in Richmond to some of the interested parties up here if you were asked?
Yes.
So the question was about officer-involved shootings.
Yes. Well, actually, I don't think we mentioned that. We talked about our police chief being as part of the Black Lives Movement and the homicides, the street violence homicides have went down. But our officer-involved shootings actually have went down. There's one that's a little controversial, but the first one in a long time that happened about a year ago. But I would definitely think that Chris Magnus, our police chief, would come to talk. He does that quite a bit. We have a community-involved police force. He's the head of it. He has changed the culture of our police department. So he has been known to come to communities who want to hear from him. So please invite him. I'm sure he'll come.
He was just in Arizona in April. If he'll go to Arizona, he'll come to you.
That's right.
We have to ask him. Is your police chief appointed by the council or
He's hired by the city manager.
hired by the city manager? That's the way our police chief is, but our county sheriff is not. He's elected. So some of our issues involve an elected official. What was the What was the name of your police chief?
Chris Magnus, yes. He was hired by the city manager, but it came after a long community policing mobilization effort with the community that, that we supported. So the city manager heard that, that was a priority, and that's why he hired him, and it turned out to be a really great thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and in Santa Rosa, I know that I personally have been involved in making sure that the citizen and local law enforcement task force recommendations will come before us again for more detailed discussion about how we can implement those. So if we can move along, there's so much to talk about and so many issues that we have, and the bringing together of the unions and the environment and the populist movements, the civil rights movements in our communities. We have to find a way to bring all of those people together. I think that's one of the essential pieces of that. And so I'm honored to introduce our next speaker because I think he's one of the people who is excellent at thinking, speaking, and doing in this area. Norman Solomon. Norman is the founder of the Institute for Public Accuracy, a consortium of policy researchers and analysts. He is IPA's executive director. He is the co-founder of the online organization rootsaction.org, which now has nearly 500,000 active members. He's written many, many books, articles, journals, and media. War Made Easy, Target Iraq, Killing Our Own, The Disaster of America's Experience with Atomic Radiation, and much more. He's appeared as a guest on many media outlets, PBS NewsHour with Jim Blair, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, C-SPAN, Public Radio's Marketplace, NPR's All Things Considered, Morning Edition, Talk of the Nation. So I'd like to ask us to warmly welcome our own Norman Solomon.
Right, before you all have the pleasure of hearing from Norman, I just wanted to tell you I'm writing a book on the last 10 years in Richmond, and I think back at the table you can get an envelope. If you can donate anything at all, it would help me out a lot. And also I'll be speaking next Saturday at Sonoma Community Center at 4 p.m. So, thank you.
Thank you, Gayle, and Norman Solomon.
Well, first, I want to say that hearing Gayle and Margaret is such a jolt of positive energy, and I'd like to ask for a big round of applause for what Margaret was talking about in terms of differentiating between conventional electoral campaigns and what we need, I think is absolutely crucial. One way I came to think of it is that the usual candidates, the usual campaigns conceive of and articulate, whether explicitly or not, that social movements are or should be subsets of a candidate's campaign for office. And that's totally bass-backwards. Electoral campaigns should be subsets of social movements. And if we veer off in the wrong track, we're going to go in a very different direction. Of course, there are so many things that need to be done, so many movements that need to be built, so many ways that we need to build coalitions. But unless we can find ways to coalesce that are effective, then we're going to end up in the same sort of cul-de-sac. A Chinese strategist said long ago, when you're in a struggle with an adversary, don't do what you most want to do. what your adversary least wants you to do. And so often, because of our acculturation and some, dare I say it, there are some design flaws in human beings, we do what we most want to do, what we've been taught to do, what we're role modeled to do. And that takes us down that path that sees, among other things, social movements and people as accessories to one particular campaign. The most successful social movements melded with and making use of, if you will, electoral campaigns clearly see that win or lose, any particular electoral campaign should leave compost in the garden. And when you leave compost in the garden, you can keep growing and you can keep seeing how this is an entire process. The sort of the training, the role modeling we've got, the stop and start. What's it like to stop and start a train? It's tremendously inefficient, it doesn't work. And yet we constantly, every year, every 2 years, we're encouraged to jump on the train, get it rolling, building it around individuals. And presumably, we really like individuals that we campaign for. But it's not about them. It's really about the ways that we can challenge the entire structure, which includes what Dr. King called the madness of militarism. And when I heard from this podium a few minutes ago the very astute observation that there are some forces way beyond our particular localities that limit what we can do, as important as it is, in our local areas. I thought of what King said when he made the comment more than 4 decades ago that the bombs in Vietnam exploded home. And we can say now that the bombs in Afghanistan and Yemen and Syria and Iraq and elsewhere, they continue to explode at home. In terms of the decimated budgets, the upside-down priorities, the shattered bodies and minds and spirits that come back to our cities and our suburban areas and our rural communities. And yet, unless we can build social movements that include a strong, growing electoral arm, we will continue to descend further and further into what Dr. King called the madness of militarism. All of these ways in which we are dealing with the multifaceted corporate power in our midst create daunting challenges, to put it mildly. And let's face it, in Sonoma County, there is a huge power structure. It is about profit. It's about who owns the real estate. It's about who controls the city councils and the boards of supervisors. And not only is it crucial that we get people elected who are part of and responsive to social movements, but on those precious occasions when we've been able to elect people who are truly part of progressive social movements, we also have that responsibility when they come up for re-election to support them. Julie Combs needs our support, and she's going to get it. And as we look at, our successes, unfortunately, compared to the scale of the problems, they're pretty darn small. And the obstacles are such that we may feel powerless, which is exactly what the power structures and people at the top of them want most from us. We're encouraged to feel powerless. We're encouraged to feel it's just too impossible. And in fact, it is possible. As Edward Galeano, the late author from Latin America, commented about, he saw graffiti that said, "Let's save pessimism for better times." We can't afford the immobilization that pessimism creates and is fomented. Part of it, I think, is a pessimism that keeps us in a rut, and it's really hard to see the broader context. We're working our part of the garden. We may feel we're working very, very hard. Other people are doing other things in other parts of the garden, and especially because of the mass media and the electoral political culture, we're diced and spliced, and there's a sense of fractionization, and that works totally against one of the most essential ingredients, which is solidarity within communities, between communities, nationwide and truly globally. I was lucky enough a couple of weeks ago to go on a 9-10-day whirlwind tour of 5 different countries with a number of whistleblowers who not only, and I don't really particularly like to say spoke truth to power, they spoke truth about power. And they were intent and are intent on organizing to counter anti-democratic power from the top down. You know, it's become sort of a cliche phrase, speaking truth to power, but at this point, I don't quite get that. Power knows what it's doing. Chevron knows what it's doing. They know the truth of their own priorities, and they are in fact planning and manipulating to implement exactly the human toll that's inflicted by their anti-democratic power. So much more important for us to not look up and speak truth to power, speak to each other about power. No wonder we have a negative view of power, because we've experienced it as so negative, top down. But in fact, it's bottom-up power that's our hope for social justice, for the environment, to prevent climate change from destroying the future on the planet. I've been working a lot in recent years to challenge the unfortunately now bipartisan perpetual war. When have we heard lately somebody saying, I wonder when the war is going to end? Even during the Vietnam War, people would say, when's the war going to end? When was the last time you asked or heard somebody ask that question? We don't ask it anymore because war has become so ongoing and so endless. The military facets of war. And it is a reality at the same time that class war waged from the top down is perpetual. It's 24/7, 365, and with all the bread and circus and the media distractions that come down on us, that doesn't change the fact that it's inexorable, it's going on constantly, and without eternal vigilance and our capacity to organize effectively, we're going to continue to live in a world of oligarchy, monetized racism, destruction of the environment, and all the other ills, including a savage healthcare system that we really, really want to change. When I was meeting with some people in a public event in Germany, about, is it now 10 days, 2 weeks ago, I was on a panel with a member of the Green Party and member of the Left Party, and later got to speak at length with Martina Renner. And I think Martina Renner, as an elected official, is a kindred spirit with Gayle, with Julie, with others who come out of and are part of social movements. She's responsive to her base. She asks them what they think. She thinks of herself not as an elite elected official, but as was said to and about Joe Hill when he was in prison, you're in there for us, we're out here for you, and we're all part of the same. I don't mean to compare being an elected official to being in jail, although sometimes even being a candidate can feel that way. But I went on from there to Reykjavik and met with Birgitta Jonsdottir, who is in the parliament. The day I met with her, there was a rally. Now, keep in mind, the population of the entire country of Iceland is smaller than the population of Sonoma County. There's about 300,000 people there. Birgitta was reelected about a year ago as a member of parliament. And when I visited with her, there was a big rally. And I mean, it was a big rally by Icelandic standards, about 250 people outside parliament in a city about the size approximately of, say, Santa Rosa. What were they protesting? They were protesting a new law just being presented from the top of the Icelandic government to ban strikes in the public sector. And I asked someone standing next to me, well, what proportion of public employees in Iceland are unionized? And the answer was 100%. You can see why the neoliberal agenda in Iceland is now pushing banning strikes from the public sector. And there were a lot of nurses and others out there raising hell because they're not going to go quietly. and by the name of the party is the name of the party is the Pirate Party. They did it in a way that said, we're going to speak truths that are off the media map. And of course, we'll be marginalized at first. And in fact, there's now only 2 or 3, as I remember, members of the Pirate Party in the Icelandic parliament. Their popularity in the latest, and I think it's a Gallup poll in Iceland, is 31%. They've risen because of the truth that they're speaking and the way in which they're addressing the economic and social environment that is, in many ways, unspoken, unaddressed by all the other parties. I'd like to just close by saying that I think we have a tremendous opportunity in the North Bay to learn from Richmond, to learn from elsewhere in the country, and to recognize at the same time our unique situation. We're somewhat spread out just in the county itself. There are ways in which the propaganda system is even more pernicious in Sonoma County. The daily newspaper is in the hands of the corporate forces. It's very difficult to reach most people early on or quickly or in the process in a thorough way that involves dialogue, let alone organizing. So I want to come back to the compost analogy. I'm just constantly, when I get an email from the Coalition for Grassroots Progress, just pleased and I feel gratified that this coalition has grown out of our electoral campaign in 2012 for Congress. And much more important than that, the Coalition for Grassroots Progress is continuing to grow and develop a precinct campaign. And you know that song, Daddy, What's a Train? I fear there's going to be a song, Daddy, What's a Precinct? 30, 40 years ago, there were concepts of precinct captains in a lot of parts of the country, and for better or worse, people were engaged in their particular precinct, and there was a process. More and more, the major political parties have just been engaged in media campaigns, advertisements, and throwing money at elections. The Coalition for Grassroots Progress at grassrootsprogress.org is infrastructure that we can build on. And Anna Givens and Alice Chan and others have just provided such important leadership. So as you head off from our event here today, and as you reflect on it in the days and hopefully decades ahead in some way, I hope that you'll keep in mind that nothing can be accomplished without organizing. It's not about this was a good speaker or this was a good event or this was a good logo or website or anything. If most of the people in this room set their minds to challenging the destructive corporate power structure of Sonoma County, this county could undergo a political sea change. It's really up to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those inspiring words, Norman, wherever you... Yeah, there you are. I've got my reading glasses on now, so I can't see past my nose. So we're going to bring it back now to our local politics after everything that we've heard. Next year is going to be a very interesting election year. We know that. We've got to get Bernie Sanders through the primary before we can elect him as president, but I know we can do that. We also have some important local elections for city council, water district supervisors, county supervisors, school boards, and so forth. There's a possible revision of Prop 13 that might be on the ballot next year. We really need that. Everybody in Sonoma County who lived through the Measure A wars knows that a regressive sales tax is not the way to pay for roads. We need to get money back from the commercial property owners who haven't paid transfer taxes in a very long time. So that might be on there. Another thing that Sonoma County is really working hard on is a living wage for Sonoma County employees, contractors, and so forth. We have Marty Bennett here. Marty, would you stand up, please? this is an important thing. And Coalition for Grassroots Progress has endorsed the living wage ordinance that the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors just gutted, and we're going to be all over their case. So Marty will be able to help you work your way through that, see him after this event. But why should we care about local elections? I naively thought when I first got involved in politics that everything should be about getting us out of Iraq. And I wasn't really very interested in working on anything on a city or county level. And then it just hit me that if I had been working on city and county level issues and candidates, we might not have been in Iraq. That sounds sort of egocentric, but if all of us around the country had been working in that way, we might not have been in Iraq. And I will just refresh our memories, the people who are representing us nationally and in the state legislature. Senator Barbara Boxer was Marin County Board of Supervisor. Senator Dianne Feinstein, San Francisco Board of Supervisor. Former Congressman Lynn Woolsey started with the Petaluma City Council. Former Senator Mike McGuire, State Senator Mike McGuire, started with the Healdsburg City Council. Congressman Jared Huffman started on the Marin Water District Board. Former State Senator Noreen Evans started with the Santa Rosa City Council. And Assembly members Jim Wood and Mark Levine both started on city councils in Healdsburg and San Rafael. So why do we care? They make local decisions that are very important, but they are also in positions. We've elected them to positions that are stepping stones to these really important positions that make decisions for us nationally and even globally. So this is why I think that we all should get very excited about re-electing Julie to the city council and getting progressives elected across the county, both in Marin and Sonoma. I think we have both Marin and Sonoma County people here. I keep thinking that it wouldn't matter who the President of the United States is if we had a progressive majority in Congress that could override the... that's right, we've got a videotape going here, so I won't use any words. That would override the asinine decisions that Congress made, or that the President makes. So that's why we need to be working on these things. Every vote counts more than we think. Some of our local elections have been extremely close. David Glass made it to being mayor of Petaluma again by 84 votes out of 18,400 votes cast. Norman Solomon, when he was running for Congress, if we'd gotten just 30 votes more per county, 30 votes more per county, he would have made it through to the general election. And I just wish that we would have had that interesting election season if Jared Huffman had to run against Norman instead of a Republican. So as we've been talking to our activists around Sonoma County, we have learned that one of the most important things that everyone thinks is that we should get money out of politics. And I couldn't agree more. And we've been hearing a lot about that today. But money in politics is here to stay for now, so what we have to work on is decreasing the influence of money in politics, and that's what our precinct program is about. That is the question: how do we overcome the influence of money in politics? It's been shown time and again that people pay more attention to what their neighbors think than the glossy, expensive flyers that they receive in their mailbox by the ton every election season. We know that in California we had the most dismal voter turnout ever in this last election, and I wonder if people just get those tons of glossy flyers and think, why should I bother with this? Nobody has engaged with me personally to tell me why I should even bother to find out what the issues really are and get out and vote. So on a very basic level, the most important thing we can do to reduce the influence of money in politics is to talk to our neighbors and get them out to vote. Anna is going to tell you about how Coalition for Grassroots Progress is going about doing that. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank you, Gayle and Margaret and Norman, for your words of inspiration and your inspired, effective actions, and for consistently pointing true north. Now on to the nuts and bolts here. Progress in our precincts is a
program initiated by the Coalition for Grassroots Progress to develop more personal contacts with voters in our districts and to better understand their issues and needs. And it's important to know that it's based on documented research on what works best for reaching voters and winning elections. This program allows activists to easily and sustainably support our candidates and ballot issues by participating in a coordinated effort with fellow activists and CGP. Progress in our precincts is designed with busy activists in mind, and that's a good thing because we know who's going to get things done, and that's the busy people here. So it's designed to involve a time commitment of get this, a few afternoons 2 to 3 times a year. Doesn't mean that you can't do a million other things, and I know that people will, but for the purposes of this program, it's designed for a few afternoons 2 to 3 times a year, and that leaves all the other afternoons for our issues, causes, and our busy lives. So it doesn't take that much time, yet each person's small time commitment is magnified by others doing the same thing in their own neighborhood. And likewise, if you decide to join us, and we hope you will, your small time commitment supports the activists working in other neighborhoods. So how does it actually work? When you sign up to get active in your neighborhood, you'll receive training, all the materials you need, including the voter list for your neighborhood, and we can partner you with other CGP activists in your area. And here I'd like to introduce, if you don't already know her, Pat Johnstone. Pat wears many, many hats, but for us, Pat is our precinct project coordinator in Marin County, so she would be your go-to person for organizing your neighborhood there. You see, it's when I touch this thing. So based on what's needed in different areas, the basic program is the same, but schedules may vary, so Pat will be your reference for Marin County activists. So, in Sonoma County, starting this month, we'll be out doing voter outreach in our neighborhoods. Each team member will receive a walk list of around 100 houses. That's it. And we're not going to come back and ask you to do some more. Not that that's not valuable, but this is the way we're doing it so that people can actually commit to doing this. So each team member will receive a walk list of about 100 houses, and you'll receive the training that you need. And your team will canvass the voters using a simple survey, distribute the CGP handout, and return the survey to us. And we'll use that information that you gather in your neighborhood to update our voter files. We'll also offer structured team walk days for folks who like to get together, have coffee, and then, fan out. Pretty traditional. Folks can also not do that. You can team up with your team member in your precinct and walk on your own schedule. It's fine, whatever you want to do, it's up to you. So some of you are meeting other people from your precinct today because of your little name tag with our sneakily put on precinct number on your name tags. So if you haven't found anybody here that's in your precinct, don't worry. We have other folks who are doing this who are just not here. And so anyone who wants to walk with a partner in your neighborhood, we'll find one for you. So neighborhood voter outreach for 2016 races begins now because we want voters to meet us now, start to become familiar with us and what CGP stands for, what kind of candidates we will be supporting. And this makes it more likely that we'll have a positive influence and be able to increase voter turnout in support of our progressive candidates and ballot issues for 2016 and beyond. So why have we chosen to organize in this fashion? Because it works. That's it. It's been proven by scientific studies and many elections, actual elections over time, that this type of personal contact with voters, especially by their neighbors, is by far the most effective method of reaching voters and winning elections. So more information about the program is available at our website, grassrootsprogress.org, or on your handout that you received when you came in. So as the smallest political unit in the country, precincts are the perfect size to organize. They're not divided by legislative or congressional districts. All the people have the same polling place. They all have the same ballot. And in California, our precincts are set at 1,000 registered voters. So that's pretty small.
Counties can up that a little bit. They're allowed to do that if they want to put in permanent absentee voters in there. It ups the number a little bit, but still, the numbers are such that they are always small enough to be covered by a small precinct team, and so that's what we're doing around the county, the counties, Marin and Sonoma. So beginning with a survey, we'll each contact 100 doors in our neighborhood. Not going to go, to another county, in our neighborhood, and we'll engage them at the door with our simple, friendly survey to find out their views on various issues. And this starts the process of finding out who, leans our way and who may be fully on board with our types of issues. And we'll learn a little bit about what's most important to the voters in our neighborhoods. So that's this summer. We'll canvass again in the fall. By this time, we'll this voter contact with their neighbors. We'll have updated contact information, and we'll begin to have a greater understanding of the types of issues that they are concerned about, and they'll know more about us and what types of candidates and issues we support. And that's it. 2015 is over. Then we'll canvass 2 or 3 times in 2016. By June 2016, we want our neighborhood contacts, just our little universe, our neighborhood of 100 houses, to know who we are and how to reach us, and what CGP is and which candidates we support and why. And they'll have plenty of opportunities by then to give us feedback and ask questions. It's also very important by this time, this is June, that we'll know how the people at our 100 houses will vote. Why? Because we want to get them to vote. It's great to have the discussion at the door, but if you're trying to win and get progressive folks elected, you're going to want the people that support you to actually get out and vote. So this part is pretty traditional too. Once we do know who supports our candidates, then we make that call right before election. And here's what we've learned. This is funny. We've learned it over and over again, small and large. Once you ask people and they tell you that yes, they're going to vote for your candidate, they actually will do that. Especially if you remind them to vote, they actually do appreciate the reminder. So that's the June, and then we'll make contact again before the November election. So in summary, what we're doing is we're building together an independent, community-oriented, permanent electoral infrastructure that can, and that does, create relationships with voters in our neighborhood. It can identify, educate, and turn out voters who will vote for the progressive candidates. So every step along the way is better than what we have now and allows us to make progress in our precincts. So the Coalition for Grassroots Progress can help you get started in your neighborhood. So now, I want to say that in order to grow, reach more voters, and get more progressives into public office, we need a few things. Of course, we need donations, and Alice will talk about this a little more. We need folks who will host a house party. Invite a few friends over to your house to hear about the Progressive Voter Program. They'll come because you invited them, and to hear about something that you believe in, and they could get involved that way. We need help with events such as this, office help, phone calls. We need folks to sign up to be a member of your precinct team. So we hope that we will work together to make this happen. So now we're going to hand out a few forms, and we invite you to take a look at them and see if there's a way that you can join in with your fellow activists to make this happen. So I'm going to hand out these now, and Alice is going to talk.
Thank you, Anna, for that really good explanation of how our program works. So we've just heard what a difference community organizing can make to overcome the political influence of CHEVRON'S money in a big city like Richmond. And I'd like everyone in the room now to imagine what your community would be like, your city council, your water district, if we had your county board of supervisors, if we had progressive majorities in each of those organizations. Just think for a minute how different our local world would be. That's the world we in CGP want us to have, and that's the world we're working towards. We don't need a lot of money to run the programs we have, but we do need some money on a regular basis. And it's ironic that in the quest to get money out of politics, I have to ask you for some money, but there it is. We do have regular monthly expenses for our database and our website, for sending emails, for printing materials and walk lists and so forth. All donations to CGP go to the infrastructure of CGP. So you're receiving sort of these donation forms, and I'd like you to sort of think about what you can do. After you've pictured that progressive majority on your city council or in your county board of supervisors, if you think you could sign up to make a monthly donation to us of $5 or $10 a month, it would be so helpful to our work. No donation is too small, and I also must say that no donation is too large. We'll accept it. Also, please consider helping us to make a difference along with your donation. Help us make a difference by walking in your precinct. Choose your precinct to walk in. Volunteers are passing, operators are standing by, and there's going to be a group picture when we're finished here. I hope that, Pat, where are you? Where are you going to do that, Pat? Up on the stage. So look at your envelope, get out your pen, fill out your envelope, and find a place to turn it in, and stick around for the group picture. Thank you again so much, Gayle McLaughlin, Margaret Jordan, and Norman Solomon, and Julie Combs for joining us in this event this afternoon. Together we can make a difference. Thanks so much for coming.